2 weeks ago, I shared a tutorial where I showed 2 different methods to place stickers on your 3D models in Blender. Now I find another method that I think works even better, but is just slightly more advanced. So in this tutorial, I would like to share how this works and how we can get an empty in order to control the placement of the sticker, which also allows us to control the scale and the rotation of the sticker very intuitively. So let me show you, and for this I'm gonna open up a new blend file, and once more I'm gonna use the same 3D model. If you want to follow along, you can download this from my Blender Kit page, which is completely free, and right here you can also find all the other 3D assets that I ever created completely for free. They are all CC0 licensed, so you can use them for whatever you want and you don't even need to credit me. I'm gonna put the link to this electrical utility box in the video description, so you can download it and follow along if you want to. Then of course you also need an image that you want to use as a sticker, and in this case once more I'm gonna use the Blender logo in order to demonstrate it. So with this ready, let's go back into Blender, and first of all we want to add in an empty object. So press Shift A, and under empty, let's say we want to bring in a single arrow and move this in front right here. Now in order for this to work, we need to place the empty directly on the surface where we want to place the sticker. So let me go to side view, rotate this 90 degrees and then place the empty right here. Now in order to add the sticker, we need to open up the material of our utility box. So let's open up a new window and switch to the shader editor. So here we have the current material setup, which is very simple. And let's just add in one more image texture. Click on open and load in the image file of the sticker that you want to use. Now let's quickly connect this to the principal BSDF node so we can see it. Currently this is completely torn up because by default it uses the UV coordinates. However, in this case we don't want to use the UV coordinates, so instead press Shift A and bring in a texture coordinates node. For the object, select our empty that we just created and plug the object output into the vector input of our logo. And now you can see this already looks better. However, we don't want the logo to repeat, so change it from repeat to clip. So we have it just once and we want to place it on the center of our empty. So let's also bring in a mapping node and add 0.5 on the X and Y location, and now it is perfectly centered around our empty. And we can already move the empty around and scale it down in order to adjust the sticker. If you look closely, you can also see that the sticker is slightly distorted. This is happening because the image I used isn't a perfect square. Right here you can see that it is 2503 by 2047 pixels. Now in order to fix this, we can simply go back to our mapping node and just play around with the X scale in order to fix this. And if you want to do it precisely, you can take the dimensions and simply divide 2047 by 2503, which will give you the exact aspect ratio. So I'm just gonna copy this value, bring it back into Blender and paste this as the X scale, and now it is perfectly undistorted and looks as it should. Alternatively, you could also just use a square image and then you wouldn't have this issue. So now let's mix the sticker together with the rest of our material. So for this, we want to bring in a mix color node. Make sure that you plug the sticker into the B input and the base color into the A input and the result into the base color of the principal BSDF node. Currently they are mixed together 50-50. So let's just use this alpha output as the factor. And now the sticker is perfectly on top of the rest of our material, and we can still move this empty around and place it wherever we want. However, now we have another issue. If you go to the back, you can see that the logo is also projected on the back. So let's create a simple mask in order to exclude the back side. And for this we can use the C depth of our empty. So once more we want to use this object output and bring it through a separate XYZ node. And if we now use this set output, we can bring in a math node, change it to greater than, and let's say we're going to use a value of minus 0.2. You can see that we get this mask that is based on the position and rotation of our empty. And we can use this to exclude the backside of our object. In order to mix this in, we need another math node. Bring it between the alpha output and the mix factor and simply change it to multiply and multiply those two masks together. So now you can see we have it just on the front and the backside is already gone. And if we take a look at the output of the principal BSDF node, now this should work perfectly and we only have the sticker on the front side. Depending on the size of your object, you might want to play around with this greater than value, maybe make it bigger or smaller until it works for your case. Now if we look closely, you can see that all the other stickers aren't as perfect as the one that we just placed. So I think it would be nice if we can add some imperfections to make it look a bit more realistic. I'm gonna use a noise texture for this. So let's add in another node, which is the noise texture node, and simply duplicate this multiply node and then plug the factor of the noise into the multiply value. Currently this is way too soft and doesn't really work. So let's also bring in a color ramp node in order to add some contrast. And I want to bring in this white value, then also play around with the scale of the noise. I want to make it much smaller, increase the contrast even more, and maybe not make it completely black, but change it to a slight gray value so it isn't as harsh, and then probably also increase the roughness just a bit. I think it's still too much, so I'm gonna bring in the white value even more, so we get just some slight imperfections in our sticker. And I think this already helps a lot, but let's also distort it just a little bit in order to make it even more realistic. For this, go between the texture coordinate and the mapping node and bring in a vector math node. Then we also want another noise texture. And before we use the noise texture, let's duplicate the vector math node, change it to subtract, plug the color in here, and let's subtract a value of 0.5 on each axis. Then duplicate it one more time, change it to scale, and now we can plug this into the add node and we can control the distortions. So first of all, I want to make it a bit smaller, so let's play around with the scale. Now obviously this is way too much. Let's bring down the scale to, let's say, 0.05, which is already a lot more subtle. Maybe make the scale even bigger and play around with the detail. This is probably still too much, so I'm gonna bring down the scale to 0.02. And I think this is just a little bit that we need. So if we compare this, this is what we had before, and this is what we have now. Alright, so I think this is really nice. So let me quickly show you the final node setup. If it was too fast for you, you can take another look right now. And finally, let me show you one more thing. Currently, it can be quite annoying to move this empty around and always rotate it so that it fits with the surface of our object. So instead we can enable snapping, go to the snapping options and enable face project and align rotation to target. And when I now move this empty around, it will always perfectly stick to the surface of our object, which is really neat and helps a lot to place the sticker on our object. And don't forget that you can also scale and rotate the empty in order to place the sticker exactly the way you want. And if you want to adjust the scale of the empty without affecting the scale of the sticker, you can also go to the empty properties and just play around with this size, which will allow you to make the empty bigger or smaller without changing the empty. Alright, so I think that's it for this tutorial. Once more, if you want to download any of my 3D assets, you can simply go to my Blender Kit page. I'm gonna put the link to this in the video description. All of my assets are completely free to download and you can use them for whatever you want without needing to credit me. And with the exact same link, you can also get a 10% discount for a premium subscription of Blender Kit, which will give you access to even more 3D assets, models, and complete scenes that you might use for your 3D projects. And if you have any further questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section. Bye!